Today we're going to take an in-depth look at the Assassin class. The Assassin focuses on high damage output and criticals. If I'm to be honest, I did not care for this class much when it came to normal missions, but when arc falls were introduced, this class absolutely shined. All of the bonus damage stacked on top of each other annihilates arc fall bosses, and event bosses for that matter. If you're going to an arc fall, I would highly recommend slapping this class on. Let's dive into the skills of the Assassin. Every class has 5 active skills, as seen here in red, and 9 passives, seen in blue. Actives are activated manually and have a cooldown when you have finished using them or when their duration is up. Passives activate automatically and can also have cooldowns. Each class has a default active skill that you cannot change, but you can upgrade it. For the Assassin, this skill is Stealth. Activating this ability will put you into stealth mode. When in stealth mode, enemies will not be able to see you and they will not shoot at you. The skill has a set duration of 10 seconds, and when you come out of the skill either by deactivating, melee, or shooting, you'll have increased damage for 3 seconds. Upgrading this active will increase the damage percentage of the extra damage. I'm not a big fan of this skill. Activating stealth can sometimes be constantly interrupted by bullets hitting you, making it so you can never get into stealth mode. At that point, you either just have to shoot the enemies, making your stealth go away, or roll away hoping the enemies miss and your stealth finally activates. I've gotten to a point where I only use this as a damage buff. I'll activate it and start shooting for the extra damage, which is a shame because the stealth mechanic could be really cool if it wasn't constantly stalled when getting hit by bullets. The skill can be upgraded 3 times much like every other active, with the last 2 actives being an exception. Next up, we have our first 3 passive skills. Each row of passive skills has a tier cap as seen here. This means that you can only spend 5 points across all 3 skills, so choose wisely. The first skill causes enemies to bleed on a critical hit, which deals a percentage of damage over the course of 3 seconds. It has a set cooldown of 20 seconds, and upgrading will increase the damage percentage. This is a nice skill to combo with stealth because if you come out of stealth and hit a critical on an enemy, you're dealing a ton of damage from stealth, and then a ton more from the bleed damage this skill inflicts. The second skill gives you a damage buff after you roll, and the cooldown is set at 20 seconds. The buff lasts for 5 seconds, and upgrading this skill will increase the percentage of extra damage you will deal. Again, this partners really well with stealth, and if you have this and the first skill, you can inflict even more damage to an enemy. Go into stealth, roll, then start shooting a critical spot on an enemy or boss, and you're dealing insane damage for a couple seconds. The last passive of this row increases your movement speed after activating stealth. This skill lasts for 5 seconds, and upgrading it will increase the movement speed granted to you. This skill could probably be pretty fun to use if you max it out, but it really isn't worth getting when you have 2 other passives that buff damage in the same row. Now we get to the 2 middle active skills. You must choose between these, so choose carefully. The first active is Mark. This ability marks an enemy, which increases damage to that enemy from all sources for 10 seconds, with a 30-second cooldown. Upgrading the skill will increase the percentage of damage the target takes from each source. This skill in comparison to the second active was a no-brainer. Having an extra damage boost on a specific target, that's pretty good, but when you can have an extra damage boost on a target from literally anyone doing damage to that target, that is amazing and can't be passed up. On top of that, you can stack it with stealth, the damage buff after rolling, and the crit bleed passive, and do stupid amounts of damage. The second active you can choose is Biotoxin. This skill applies a damage over time effect to the enemy inflicted by the skill for a certain duration. If that enemy dies while afflicted by the skill, the damage over time effect will spread to nearby enemies. Upgrading the skill will increase the duration of the damage over time effect. This skill is probably really good when it comes to solo play, as it will help to weaken or kill a lot of enemies in a close space, but if you're someone who is doing lots of arc falls or co-op events where bosses occur, then the Mark ability is simply too good to pass up. Next up, we have the 2 rows of passives. The first passive increases recoil recovery on snipers. Upgrading the skill will increase the recovery time. This skill is a waste of time in my opinion. I've been using quite a lot of snipers with the Assassin, and this is definitely not needed. I would not waste a single point on this unless you really need to. The other passives in this row are a lot more beneficial. The second passive of the row makes pistols deal increased damage at close range. Upgrading the skill will increase the damage. I usually don't use pistols, but after receiving the M212 Demon prototype a while back, I would definitely say there is a purpose for this skill. If you want to use the M212 with this class, this is a nice little skill to have. Finally, we get to the last passive in this row. This skill increases your reload speed for 5 seconds after getting a critical kill. It has a set cooldown of 20 seconds, and upgrading the skill will increase the reload speed. I'm always a huge fan of reload speed no matter the game. In this case, it's very beneficial because you're probably using accurate weapons with the assassin to land those crits and take advantage of all your skills. Accurate weapons such as sniper rifles do take a bit to reload, so having that extra reload is really nice as long as you're hitting those crits. Moving on to the next row, we start with hitting enemies from behind deals increased damage. Upgrading this skill will increase the damage you deal. I think this skill is quite useless for myself because the only real time you're hitting an enemy from behind is if you're stealthed, and like I stated earlier, because of the annoying issue of being taken out of stealth when being bombarded with bullets, I personally never actually use stealth to sneak around. I just use it as a damage buff, so this skill would be pointless for me to get. That's just my preference though, you might be able to get some good use out of it. The second skill gives a chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds on a critical hit. It has a set cooldown of 20 seconds and upgrading it will increase the chance of a stun. I thought the skill was pretty cool, but with the last passive being so good, I didn't want to invest many points into it. I put 1 point into this skill and never remember an enemy being stunned, so I'd either avoid this altogether or max out points on it if you really want the stun. The last passive skill gives you extra damage to enemies below 30% health. Upgrading the skill will increase the damage dealt. This is helpful in pretty much any situation, whether it be your average raiders, hellbugs, 99ers, etc., or a boss. It obviously does better against a boss because they stay at 30% health and below a lot longer than your average enemy, but when it comes down to it, this passive is really good for any situation. Now we finally reach the last 2 active skills. Again, you must choose one of these 2 skills, you cannot have both. These actives are able to level up 4 times compared to the 3 levels of every other active. Up first, we have Hidden Blade. This skill lets you pull out a charge blade that depletes energy over time. The skill has a set cooldown of 60 seconds, and upgrading the skill will increase the energy of the blade. I love charge blades. Being a huge fan of the show, the charge blades were always a favorite of mine simply because of Daytak's charge blade and how much character he brought to the blade itself. With that being said, I'd really prefer a long-range weapon over a melee weapon when it comes to the game. I can't see myself living for very long as I rush enemies with a melee weapon. Again, this is a personal preference, and I know a lot of people will definitely prefer the blade. The final active is what I chose, and it is the Big Bang. This skill summons a charge sniper. You can use the sniper normally or charge the sniper for a lot more damage, which will in return use more ammo. This weapon will also deplete ammo over time. It has a set cooldown of 120 seconds, and upgrading the skill will increase the duration of the Big Bang. This weapon does insane damage, and it is a must if you like to jump into arc falls or other events when they pop up. The amount of damage this weapon dishes out is unbelievable, and if you stack it with the other damage actives and passives of the class, you can really leave a mark on an enemy. That wraps it up for the in-depth look at the Assassin. This class was built for damage buffs and taking advantage of crits. It's not my favorite class, but people who like doing stupid amounts of damage rather than moderate damage with high sustain will love this class. I will say this is probably my favorite class for arc falls though. The damage you can combo on the end boss is so crazy high that I end up using this class at every arc fall I go to. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for our new Defiance 2050 video every day. I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow in the next Defiance video.